9 magic types, 1 save file, 153 hours of gameplay. Welcome to beating all of the Elden Ring DLC magic challenges. The 9 magic types that I chose are as followed: Holy, Rot, Thorns, Beastial, Gravity, Glintstone, Lightning, Fire, and Death. Let's go over the rules. Rule number 1. I cannot use Rellana to reroll my stats at any point during the run. Rule number 2. We must only use that run's damage type to deal damage. Rule number 3. After every new game cycle, we must switch our magic type. And rule number 4. I must only use the Shadow of the Erdtree spells. With the rules out of the way, let's start the game. Be sure to grab a snack because this is going to be a long one. First off, we choose our class. I opted for the Prophet because the first magic type is Holy. One thing that I forgot to mention, I will spawn myself in the realm of the Shadow, and I am not allowed to leave the DLC until our first playthrough is complete. I have given myself all of our talisman pouches, golden seeds, sacred tears, and torrent. The first couple of things we will be collecting along the way are Scadutree fragments, any shadow runes we come across, and smithing stones. We make a quick pit stop to grab the two-headed turtle talisman, and while we are doing this, we are taking this time to unlock the whole map. This will be useful for grabbing all of our spells, armor, and staves that we need throughout all of the playthroughs. We scoop up our first spell, the Golden Arcs. Now that we are in the Black Keep, we make sure to pick up the Bolt Drake Talisman, and shortly after that, we grab the aspects of the Crucible Bloom. We sneak our way into this normally blocked off area to grab the giant Golden Arc, followed up by our first seal, the Dryleaf Seal. This seal will be very helpful in our first playthrough as it scales with Faith, and it boosts the damage type of any Ring of Light spells, one of which we actually get to use. We then grab the Fire Knight Seal, and more importantly, grab the Marika's Rune for a mass amount of levels. With these levels, I am now actually able to use my seal and spells. So now it's time to level up our seal. We run through the ruined forges to grab any smithing stones that we can find laying around. As you can see, we got almost all of our stones just running through these 3 mines, but not quite all of them. So we quickly gather up some of our missing stones, as well as grabbing the Flame Drake Talisman. We then level up our seal to 25. Remember earlier how I said this seal boosts the Ring of Light spells? Well, it was about time we go get one. We just have to hop over here and yep, he did all of the work for us. Now that we could do some real damage, it was time to hunt the local hippopotamuses, hippopotami, whatever you call them, we are going to kill them. After struggling to kill these hippos, I realized it's time to upgrade our armor. So we make our way over to the Western Nameless Mausoleum to take on the Knight of the Solitary Jail. As long as we get some distance, the multi-layered Ring of Light does wonders. We can keep him inside of the radius for the whole spell duration. It was a whole lot of running and fearing for my life, but in the end, he wasn't much of a problem. This was one of the easier fights, and we got a great set of armor out of it. So we throw it on. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, so it will be a great set of armor. We then grab the Viridian Amber Medallion. We go pick up the Death Knight set. After that, we scoop up the Pearl Drake Talisman. Now at this point, I am severely lacking levels. So who better to kill than the Ghost Flame Dragon? These guys are super weak to Holy, so it's a perfect matchup. I can stay on horseback just tossing out ring after ring after ring. As you can see, it is doing a tremendous amount of damage. We end up getting a Poise Break, and that's where we really get to melt his HP bar. It's insane how weak these guys are to holy damage. After a bit of circling him, we take out the Ghost Flame Dragon. We do this all over again for the other 2 Ghost Flame Dragons. After taking out the dragons, I wanted to unlock more of the map. So we have to take down both versions of the Ancient Dragon Man. And honestly, the Ancient Dragon Man was the hardest thing that we have fought this far. He does a good amount of damage, and worst of all, he doesn't like to give us any space. He is constantly on our heels. This led to just a lot of running, hoping that he would go for an attack so I can get enough space to throw a disc safely. While he was caught in the disc, instead of going for another attack, we use that time to gain some more space to throw another one, and we repeat this until he dies. We then go pick up the Rings of Spectral Light, gather some more Scadutree fragments, and now we were finally ready for our first major boss, the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. Alright, let's see how this goes. I'm gonna test out my damage with all of our 3 spells here, see which one will be the most efficient. I presume multi-layered Ring of Light will still be that guy. We won't charge. Okay, that does pitiful damage. 300? What about you? That's 400. Okay, this guy I think is just gonna be the guy of all the guys. I just gotta find the best opportunities. So do I just treat this like melee? Stick close? Oh, and he gets that attack off, and it's on him. That's doing some good damage. Yeah, I don't know if I'll have enough FP right now. I think I need to go kill other things just to level up my mind. I haven't fought this guy in forever, so I'm not playing well. Yeah, that's what makes it so hard, is when your FP gets drained for something that's not able to connect. Oh, there it is. Oh, that's not gonna feel good. I mean, we're doing so much damage right now. I think I've gotten into like the little bit of the flow of how to make this work. Oh, we got a poise. Just stack them up. Did he go from lightning to lightning? Oh, he's doing all of them. I forgot. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think I had enough FP to win, but it's doable. Nice. Right after the fight, we visit the Finger Lady to trade in our remembrance for the Enraged Divine Beast Talisman. We are now back to collecting some spells. We visit Grandma wearing the head of the Divine Beast Dancing Lion to get the Watchful Spirit spell. We then visit the Golden Hippopotamus to kill the last of the hippo kind. We try out the Watchful Spirit spell here, and it's okay. It hovers over your head as like the phalanx spells do, except it isn't like a one-time shot. It shoots out 3 or so low damage projectiles. It's good as long as you are facing them, and that's the part I don't like. If you are in motion, like running away, it will decide to just fire off and it will just miss. In comparison to the phalanx, it will hold it there until you look at them. This paired with the multi-layered frisbee does some nice damage. We get into phase 2 rather quickly, but it's back to survival mode because a lot of his moves in this phase just do too much damage. We try to keep our distance as much as possible and launch off frisbees until the hippo is slain. This grants us both some Scadutree fragments as well as the aspects of Crucible Thorns spell. We then make our way over to the hinterland, picking up the Minor Erdtree spell, the Golden Braid, and to take on the Falling Star Beast. We did much more damage than I was expecting to do to the beast because usually he doesn't like taking damage. As far as a strategy goes, as long as we aren't in the way of his charged attacks, we aren't in any risk of getting killed and just can consistently keep on casting. We end up slaying the beast and we get our Gravitational Missile spell. We then blow on the finger for the Cerulean Seed Talisman, head over to the other finger for the Crimson Seed Talisman, and now it was time to do Leta's quest, which means I have to suggest Hornsent for the hunt, assist Leta in killing Hornsent, talk to Ansbach, make more sad forever, pick up the secret right scroll, give it to Ansbach, and assist him in killing Leta. We will be doing all of this minus the Ansbach stuff in every playthrough, because what this does is limit the Leta fight to only having Leta and Dryleaf Dane. The Ansbach stuff is just for a spell that we are going to get much later. We then grab Wrath from Afar and Divine Bird Feathers. Then we go into the forest to slay Regulia the Great Red Bear, and we kind of just cheese her, to be honest. She is a menace and will just throw her body at you and kill you. To counter that, we do some damage, we run away until she loses aggro, and then when she's like just minding her business, we do some more damage and we run away all over again and repeat this until she is dead. It was very shameful, but it got the job done, giving us the Roar of Regulia. We then scoop up the Pest Thread Spears, head back underground for the Massive Putrescents, trade in our Dragon Hearts for the Ghost Flame Breath, scoop up Fire Serpent, grab Electro Charge, grab Impenetrable Thorns, kill this Tree Spirit for Mantle of Thorns, talk to Count Ymir for the beloved Stardust Talisman, purchase the Glintstone Nail, Glintstone Nails, and Fleeting Microcosm, head over to Castle Enzis to grab Glintblade Trio, scoop up the Feldrake Talisman, and now it was time for our second boss, Rellana. Our spell of choice here is still the Multi-Layered Frisbee. It just outclasses all of our current spells by a mile. We are treating this one like the Dancing Lion in the sense where we are just trying to keep our distance, especially because Rellana has a good amount of ranged attacks, whether that be a variation of the Phalanx, the big Glintstone Blade, or her ranged magic slices. These are all very good opportunities to get our damage in. We eventually end up getting a poise break, which in this instance doesn't benefit us too much because she gets up so quick, but we will always take the extra damage. I also throw off a couple golden arcs, but as you can see right now, it's just not doing enough damage. One of our best opportunities to get some damage off is when she is phase shifting. It's a couple of free casts while she's in the initial animation, and then once she is in phase 2, we have some new things to look out for. Every attack she uses does so much more damage. We are trying to keep our distance even more because we don't ever want to be in melee range, because if we get caught in one of her double sword combos, we just die. But besides that, most of our punishments will be the same, whether it's the phalanx, range slices, giant sword, or the newly added moon attack. Overall, this boss was relatively easy. We take her out and purchase the twin moons from the shop and move onwards to the depths of the stone coffin fissure, as the next boss on the hit list is the Putrescent Knight. This is the first fight where we need to use the beloved Stardust Talisman, which essentially boosts your casting speed to the equivalent of having 99 dexterity, but you take 30% more damage for having it on. This is essential with how fast moving a lot of these attacks can be. We also are using the golden arcs instead of the ring for this fight because it has a much better tracking, and with him moving so much on the horse, I found a majority of the Ring of Light spells would barely hit him or just miss completely. As for openings, this fight has a ton of them. Whenever he charges off the horse, we get an attack off. Whenever he throws his weapon, we get an attack off. Basically anything he does, we can punish him for it, but that is only because we are attacking so damn fast. I even end up getting greedy and just spam it without caring for the damage I was taking because I had so many healing pots in my back pocket. It also helps that he is just super weak to holy. We do end up getting a poise break near the end of the fight, which just seals the deal. This fight was another easy one. So far, the hardest fight of the main bosses has been the Dancing Lion. Like with most remembrances in our first playthrough, we cash it in for a spell. We then make our way through the Dark Light Catacombs to take on Jory. Jory was actually hard. She kept casting and summoning and casting and summoning, and I just kept getting so overwhelmed and dying, so it took a lot longer than I liked, but we do eventually take her out. We are mainly in the Abyssal Woods to gather up some more fragments. Once we collected those, we wrap up some of the leftover fragments that I have missed in my initial collection period. But once we wrap that up, we killed the Death Knight. He wasn't too difficult. He took a lot of damage and just didn't have anything super threatening to us as long as we avoided the soul grab. We killed him mainly for levels. We do the same thing with the other Death Knight. This portion of the run is me walking into the main bosses, getting bent over, turning around, and going, okay, now what? And we killed the other bear, Ralva. This one was a multi-purpose kill. We wanted to get the Pelt of Ralva, which boosts the Roar of Regulia. And after that, we decided that out of all of the main bosses that I had access to, that the Scadutree avatar was actually going to be the easiest. I knew his moveset pretty well due to being stuck on him in a randomizer I did recently, so that paired with being able to constantly attack his face made this a lot easier than the other guys. Because as you can see, we are doing a ton of damage to the face. Phase 1 caused us no issues, but I then did something forbidden and used my fist to cause the phase shift. I technically broke a rule here, but for how intense this challenge gets later on, we're just gonna move on and pretend like it didn't happen, okay? I'm sorry. Phase 2 was a little harder, with him punishing me a lot more for the openings that I was used to. I was still doing a good amount of damage, so I just tried to play a bit more passive, focusing on our guaranteed openings and not just casting willy-nilly like I normally would. We end up taking out phase 2 and moving us into probably the easiest phase of them all, phase 3. This phase is a lot easier because he is so sluggish and he has given up. He just panics, he goes for the explosion, exerting all of his energy in a last effort to stay alive. It's a really beautiful fight in that sense. He never stops fighting even when he has nothing left. But we're not here for the sob story, so we take him out back and we put down the Sunflower. We then cash in the Remembrance for the Land of the Shadow, which is also a spell for our class. Up next is Commander Gaius. Basically, Mesmer was bullying me really hard, and my cope was that if I killed Gaius and got the Scadutree fragments, I would magically be good enough to beat Mesmer. So here we are. The spell of choice here is still the Ring of Light for this fight. We didn't mind sticking close as most of his openings were punishable, and we didn't want to get charged at too many times because one, it eats up too much of our HP and it's very time consuming. The disc was doing a good job. If I got my full charge and he stayed in it, I was getting like a consistent 1700, which was so relieving to see. We get him into phase 2 and not much changes for us. If anything, he gets a little more annoying because when he does any of the flying attacks and if I'm casting during them, I will just miss. And there wasn't anything too special about this fight. There's no secret sauce. We just avoid the projectiles and stick close enough to make sure he doesn't charge and hope that all of our spells connect. We end up taking out the Hog Rider without much of a sweat. We then claim our reward, all of the fragments. We needed a couple more levels, so I ended up using the giant golden arc to take out the Lamenter. I grab another fragment.
I didn't even know this was up here.
Now it is time for the Mother of Fingers. Unlike Gaius, we don't really want to be close at all. Her ranged attacks are more punishable than anything that she does with her fingers when we get close. Our spell is doing less damage here, but as long as we play safe, we should be okay. We also have to worry about when she spawns in her little finger children. When this happens, we try to kill them immediately because it's so easy to like forget about them or like they get stuck on the other side of her and then they'll try to sneak up on you. She also doesn't have much poise as we end up getting 2 breaks before getting into phase 2. Once we do get into phase 2 though, we stay away and sort of wait around for the big laser beam attack. When this happens, we have to focus on 2 things. 1, dealing damage, but 2, the beams. One thing I didn't know is she takes reduced damage when she's in this phase, which makes sense, but I just didn't notice it in the moment until watching it back now. And I think this is the first time I've ever like noticed that. So cool, I guess. I do pull off a little fun pre-fire here to get her when she's coming back down to do some real damage. She then tries to summon some more children and we kill them before they can learn to say their first word. Also, the big spinning attack is always one to be very careful of because she can catch us off guard very easily, but as long as we're at full HP, we should be okay. She ends up going into another laser beam attack and that causes a big enough opening for us to get the job done. Now it's time to cash in some remembrances. First, we grab the Blades of Stone spell from Gaius. We grab the Staff of the Great Beyond from the Finger Mommy, and this staff will be essential once we get into the later runs because it scales off of both intelligence and faith, and because we will be leveling them both up to access all of our spells, this staff is a blessing. We then make our way back to the Cathedral because we have some unfinished business with this finger freak. We kill him to get the High Priest robe and Maternal Staff, which boosts finger sorceries, and because he is dead, we can stop by his grave to grab the Cherishing Fingers spell. I then make my way over to the second Beast Dancing Lion to test out the Land of the Shadow spell, and this thing makes sure to track him down. It does some solid damage, but we opt in for using the Ring of Light because we can just cast it on Torrent, which is just so much better than having to sit down on the ground and wait around for a bit, especially when all of the little Death Blight freaks come out. They are a lot easier to manage on horseback. We then take him out and gain the Divine Beast Tornado spell. The next boss on the hit list is Romina, and yes, I am doing everything I can to avoid facing Mesmer. And to be honest, out of all of the bosses necessary to beat the game, obviously consort Radahn being the hardest every single time, and Mesmer being the second hardest most of the time, Romina was consistently hard, especially when I got to like the later new game cycles. She's just so awkward to try to like get spells off of when she's kind of like constantly wiggling around and trying to like get up next to you. That's like not what you want at all. We tried to keep our distance the best we could. Her poise broke early, which helped us a ton, but once we got into phase 2, it actually felt a bit easier, and that's because of her bigger openings on her like big butterfly attacks or the super long swoops in the air. We end up getting a second poise break, and shortly after that she went for the butterfly attack and I knew it was basically over. She was too low to be able to do anything, allowing us to finish her off. We then grab the Rotten Butterfly spell. Now I can't avoid it any longer. It's finally time for Mesmer. We enter and avoid his initial explosion attack, and we quickly realize that our damage isn't as good here as it has been in every other fight so far. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best times to cast because Mesmer can be in your face and all over the place at the same time. I quickly learned that anytime he does an attack that causes his spear to disappear, to like reconjure in his hands, I have an opening. The animation of it spawning back is just long enough for me to get an attack off. Another attack that I can punish is when he goes for the 3 poke attacks. I just barely get enough time for a cast. Besides those openings, the only other punish I have is when he goes for his full combo attack. a lot of the time I'm just running in circles, hoping that he goes for an attack that I can punish. But that's about it for phase 1. There aren't a lot of openings. A majority of the time he can punish me if he really wants to, and that's terrifying. Like, even for some of his attacks that he like conjures his spear again, if I'm too close, he can just instantly transition into another attack that just cuts me off. Once we get into phase 2, things actually start to get easier. I found that the snake form took a bit more damage for whatever reason, and there were a lot more openings. Most of his snake attacks are very punishable. His new poke combo allows me to just stay back and cast, and in this phase there wasn't much that I couldn't punish. I always found that phase 2 was significantly easier in every single run. For example, if he goes for like the ball explosion attack, I can usually get 2 casts off, but in phase 1 I can only get 1 off. His recovery time is much quicker. Everything just feels better in phase 2, and after many attempts, I take out Mesmer.
Yes!
I trade in the Remembrance for Mesmer's Orb, we burn down the tree, and now it's time for Inner Elm. We have a few things to pick up while we are here. We grab the Spira spell, we grab the last of our fragments, and we pick up the Gravebird Helm, which boosts the Spectral Ring of Light attack by 15%. We then go grab the Sacred Tower painting in this cave, and we can only do this now because the ghost won't show up unless Mesmer is killed. We hop up to where the Northern Nameless Mausoleum is, ride over to the cliffside, and find our guy who drops us the Spiral Tree Seal. This seal boosts Golden Arcs, Giant Golden Arcs, and Spira by 20%. We offhand this while still using the Dry Leaf Seal as our primary due to the better scaling. Now it is time for the Leta fight. I found that most spell types had a good enough way to deal with them. This one being the Giant Golden Arc. It tracked them perfectly and had a huge wide sweep, so they couldn't really avoid it. And it had potential to hit both of them if they were running next to each other, and honestly, this carried the fight. I always try to drain Dryleaf Dane of his first pot before Leta could spawn in. And then once Leta spawned in, I would have to run away to gain enough distance to get a cast off, or wait for them to try to cast at me. And I wasn't able to get many spells off at once. I would opt for maybe like charging one really big one so I could hit them both, and the only time I could spam it if I knew I had a big opening, or if they were spamming dodge roll, because I knew I would still catch them. I repeated this until Dane was dead, and then things got real easy. I get a little distance and I start to spam the spell, and Leta didn't really know what to do with herself. I did get very fortunate draining a lot of her HP while Dane was still alive due to the massive range of the arc. We would just repeat this little dance until Leta was dead. So now it's time for the promised consort Radahn. For this fight, the talismans we are running are the Golden Braid, the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman, the Crimson Seed Talisman, because our health is just so high that we're not healing enough without it, and it's basically a mainstay in our talisman slots going forward. And the last one for this particular run is the Beloved Stardust, because Rings of Light has a slower casting time, so I needed it for an optimal Radahn fight. For phase 1, we are basically safe to cast after any of his attacks. Us being farther away is better, but not a big deal, as everything is very punishable and we are doing good damage. We are able to get a fully charged attack if he does the combo where he pulls the dirt from the ground. The only issue with the charged attacks is with the ring, it gets so big, and because we are always like right beside Radahn, it makes visibility horrendous. Once we get into phase 2, we got kind of unlucky because he was pulling us forward while the phase shift was happening, so we were very off center, which threw me off my game, allowing me to get hit. In this phase, we are doing significantly less damage because he decides all of a sudden he resists holy damage, but just like phase 1, most if not all attacks are punishable. There is one in particular that I don't like seeing, and that is the meteor attack where he flies into the air and throws down a bunch of meteors. And this is probably just a skill issue, but I cannot dodge every part of that attack. Like, I think I've done it successfully maybe like a handful of times, and I've spent a better part of 24 hours fighting Radahn in this challenge alone. The only saving grace here is that because we do have a long range spell, we can try to throw him off his game by attacking him in the air, which has a chance of him just dropping to the ground. The attacks we love seeing, the hug attack where he tries to grab you, W, the ground pull-up attack, the blood flame slash attack, the floating attack, and the long sweep combo, as these are all very easily punishable with a low risk of a follow-up that will instantly kill us. In every single run, I start to panic once he gets into like the third phase, quote unquote, when he does like the big meteor attack, because for the most part, I'm not watching his HP, I'm just focusing on surviving and getting my damage in. But once he goes for that attack, it's like a little mental check that we are close. So my heart rate spikes, and you will see here I start panicking and getting hit by attacks that I usually don't get hit by, and I will just allow the final sequence to play out with all of these fights, because Radahn is truly a spectacle and a very, very hard boss. With Radahn dead, that is the end of run 1. We just gotta scoop up the Furious Blade of Ansbach, sit on the throne, and start New Game Plus. Before we start run number 2 though, we will rank Holy on the tier list. Yes, the tier list is back. I think Holy is a B tier in the DLC. Besides Ring of Light, none of these spells really stood out. They all had their purpose and got the job done, but it was nothing special. I will use Holy as like the baseline for all of the other spell types to come after it. It's time for run 2. The Rot Run. There are only 2 spells in the Servant of Rot spell type, which are the Pest Thread Spears, which doesn't give rot, just does a lot of damage, and the Rotten Butterflies. We chose this spell type because honestly, I just needed an easier time, and I was like struggling so much with the first run, I kind of needed a breather, and we already had the faith for these spells. With that being said, let's hop into the first boss, the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. I know what you might be thinking, why fight the Dancing Lion? It's not required to beat the DLC, and yeah, you would be correct in thinking that, but he is our resident spell tester. I will always fight the lion to get a feel of what we are working with. So as you can see, we find out that the spears do a ton of damage, and what we will be doing in every fight is using the Rotten Butterflies to inflict rot on the boss, and then we can sort of back up and use the spears to do a lot of the damage. The rot also does so much damage on its own, it's like theoretically I could just run in circles and play it extremely safe, and to be fair, I do this during the lightning phase because it was hard to get damage off, but a majority of our damage will be with the spears because this combo is honestly kind of broken, as the fully charged spears can do upwards of like 3,000 damage, which is just insane, and it does a lot better on the bigger bosses. I think it's because the way like the hitboxes work and how many spears there are. The Dancing Lion wasn't much of a threat at all. We send in our final spears to send him to the grave, and all of our levels that we gain from this run will be dumped into intelligence because we need to start preparing for our future runs.
Wow, these spells are really good.
Onto Rellana. Now you could question why I fight her. I don't really have a good reason besides like I need levels, so we give her rot and start spamming the threads. We do so much damage. We just run circles until we can get openings, and because we are only on like the second new game cycle, she doesn't do enough damage for me to play super strategical. I will have to later, but at this point I'm just running around summoning our Butterflies of Doom and having a good time. Not much more to say about this fight, it was rather easy. Next up is the Putrescent Knight. We apply rot and use the usual openings that we established in the first run to deal a stupid amount of damage to the Putrescent Knight with the spears. The rot is extra good here because he runs around so much. We end up getting him into phase 2, and just look at that damage. He outlasts the rot, which was surprising, but he goes down just after one more cast. This was our first try of the whole challenge thus far. Next up is Bayle. I was getting smacked all around the arena when I tried to use Holy, so this time I came in with a vengeance. Just like every other fight so far, we start off with the Rotten Butterflies. The spears really get to shine. It does a ridiculous amount of damage, and I was in survival mode for this fight, just taking a ton of damage while trying to cast spells, not really conserving my HP, and letting rot do a lot of the heavy lifting. Once we got into phase 2, I could fire off some more spears. Bayle ends up outlasting the rot, so I have to survive the scary combo to get off a second dose of rot. And thankfully, after just one cast, the rot is back. And because he was getting so low, I was kind of in desperation mode, not really playing strategically, just praying that I did enough damage before he killed me.
Wow, this is so much easier than Holy. Like, I tried this fight so many times, and I just showed up here and won.
We then trade in his heart for the Bayle's Flame Lightning. Now it's time for the other boss I didn't do in the first cycle, Midra. We first take care of this little rat and get to the real boss. Now this is where it gets scary, because at any point if I get Frenzied Flame, I lose a big chunk of FP, and that is something that is very hard to plan for. I give Midra rot, and then I spend my time running from each end of the arena, letting off the spears. Like once I got to one end, I would cast until it got close, then I would run to the other end, cast some more. I would repeat this process until we got into phase 2, because I found that was the easiest way to get damage off in this fight. Once we get to phase 2, our strategy mostly stays the same, but it gets a lot scarier. This is where the Frenzied Burst can be deadly. It can cause an instant proc, which will stun me in place and drain my FP, so I always have to be on the lookout for the frenzied attacks. Once rot goes away, we get lucky with the attack he goes for to give another dose of rot. We stick to the edge of the arena until we end up getting cornered. And at this point, I'm kind of mostly stalling for the rot to do the work for me, but I'm still trying to cast as much as I possibly can. It's just so scary. And Midra ends up succumbing to the Scarlet Rot. I then trade in their remembrance for Midra's Flame of Frenzy. It's now time for Mesmer. Like all of the bosses this time around is much easier. Even though we only have 2 spells, as you can see, they combo together so well. As per usual with this run, we start out with our favorite butterflies in the first opening available. He ends up getting rot right away, therefore we use the same openings we did for the first run. Just whenever he's forced to conjure his spear, we get to use our spear. The rot does the hard carrying because the openings don't come as often as they do in other fights. Just because he attacks so fast, we are very limited on when we can cast. Phase 1 ends due to rot, and now we are into my favorite phase, the snake. The rot either ran out perfectly or it always goes away during the phase shift. I'm not too sure, but we do have to re-proc, so we spend the first little bit getting the rot back. The only thing our spell struggled with in this fight is if we are too close to Mesmer, then some of the spears will go over his head and won't do a lot of damage just because how small Mesmer is in comparison to some of the other bosses. But we wait for the proper openings given to us by the snake gods to take out Mesmer. Now it's time we had a fair matchup, Romina. As we learned in my original rot run, rot on rot isn't good. She can't get rot, which usually would be a big bummer, but the spears are just too damn good. And I guess at some point I grabbed the Moor set off of his dead body. I can't find when I did this, so that explains why I have the helmet on, but this is the set we are now working towards, so once we can afford to put some more levels into stamina, we'll switch over to the Moor set. But as you can see, the pest threads are doing great against Romina. We just watch out for the long sweeps and the grab attacks. Besides that, we can just keep on firing off our threads. This fight was the hardest of the bosses in this run just due to the lack of rot. We always want to try to get our charged attack off because the damage difference is like 800 more, but it's not often we are able to because she loves to squirm around. After almost dying, we get lucky as she opts in for the butterfly attack of her own, which just gives us a big enough opening to take her out. We then take on Gaius. This was mainly just for levels. I just cheesed him, like straight up. I just gave him rot and got him stuck on a wall. So we just sort of sit here, wait for our rot to run out, and then we actually have to do something. Not much to say here. I took the easy way out. And now it's time for Leta and her friends. I ended up making a little bit of an oopsie in this run, and I forgot to do the Leta quest. So Hornsent is alive, meaning I have to kill 3 guys instead of 2. But because we do so much damage, I kill Hornsent before Dane can enter our world. I then get him nice and low, forcing him to pot while Leta spawns in. From this point on, I can try to look for openings for rotten butterflies for Dane. Leta cannot rot. Once he has rot, I can just run in circles to get him low. I try to use the spears now and again, but with 2 of them chasing me down, I didn't have many opportunities to do so the rot ends up doing a lot of the carrying in this fight. I end up letting him die to rot, and now it's time for Leta. And because she can't rot, I just have to spam a bunch of spears. I am very fortunate that the spears, when they do connect, end up stunning her for a second, allowing me to chain them together. I end up doing this until she dies. Now that ends up leading us to the big bad Radahn. Before I show the winning run, just look at how tragic this run is. We get down to the wire. We make a mistake and die, and then the rod kills Radahn. We trade deaths. It took too long for him to die, so we don't get the win. And then the same thing happens the next run, which was crazy. Here is the real run. As per usual, we start off with the rotten butterflies. You already know we have to canonically kill Radahn with rot. There are less openings with rot than there was with holy. Just because we are only going for spots we can guarantee use threads, which is usually at the end of his longer combos. For any of the attacks I could charge up for the holy run, that's like my only opening for this run. We end up getting into phase 2 rather quickly, and as you can see, the rot is no more. So now we must find an opening to go for the rotten butterflies. And a fun fact I learned from all of these attempts is that when you are going for the rotten butterfly attack, if he tries to hug you, he can't. Like, you just like float there while he like grabs the air and get the attack off. And we end up having to use the rotten butterflies twice before he gets rot. With the same thing with phase 1 applies here, where we can only attack where we could do the charged attack last time, because he will just end my entire bloodline at any other point in this battle. It also helps that the rot makes up for us not having many openings, so I can just focus on dodging and let rot do all of the work for me, which felt so relieving, especially after the holy run. Once he is down from the nuke, I try to predict him to come over to me, so I like pre-fire the rotten butterflies, and he makes me look like a fool. And at this point, I have no more FP pots in the back, and I'm just relying on the rotten butterflies to give him rot. After 3 casts of the rotten butterflies, he has it. I now only have 1 health pot and no FP pots. He grabs me. It's honestly a blessing in disguise because he is actively taking rot damage while he's holding me, and it comes down to the wire. I end up drinking my last pot, and rot does it for me, taking out Radahn. I forgot to record me sitting on the throne, but now it's time for Journey 3. As for the tier list, we will slap rot into the S tier. It was by far the easiest run of the whole challenge, and both spells did a great job of killing all of the bosses. I have no complaints here. The spears hit really hard, and rot is one of, if not the best status type. And now it's time for run 3, Thorns. We pivot to the Staff of the Great Beyond, and I level it up to +10. This will be our main catalyst going forward. We start off with the Divine Beast Dancing Lion.
Okay, I'm scared. Oh, that's no damage. Wow. Okay, will this be good? Okay, that I thought I was gonna be struggling. Wow. Yeah, this stuff sucks. Oh, but that bleed though. Was it eating my HP? Only a little bit.
And we find out real quick that one of our spells is straight up useless. The Mantle of Thorns only lasts for around 30 seconds and does no damage. So the spell we will be using for the whole run is the Impenetrable Thorns. One thing that I didn't account for is every time I cast, I lose a bit of HP. So I have to try to like mentally calculate how much damage they're doing to me, as well as the damage I'm doing to myself, to know which HP I need to be at to stay alive. On top of that, this spell is super slow to cast with. The only thing that saves this spell from mediocrity is the fact that it causes bleed. This is straight up the hardest run out of all of them, and it took me the longest. I think I died to the Divine Beast Lion like 20 times before I ended up killing him. This spell is also very weird because in order to get the maximum amount of damage, you need all 3 of the thorn spikes to hit, which is very rare because every boss likes to move around, making at least 1 or 2 of them missing. So this spell in theory is really good, but in practice it's just okay. We spend most of this fight trying to get a distance on him to where I can cast somewhat safely. It is truly never safe with this spell, and after a ton of struggling, we take out the Dancing Lion. This fight made me realize that going forward, I was going to need the Beloved Stardust for the casting speed if I want to be able to actually fight back. It's time for Romina. I remember that every fight going forward in this run sucked so much. I was in so much pain. I spent like a whole 8 hours on Mesmer alone. This run almost made me scrap the entire challenge, but we persevered. Romina was not any easier. The most damage we got off at one time was during the starting portion of the fight where she's slowly walking towards you. We find out early that she bleeds, which will help us tremendously. The openings are the same as the other fights, as we are now using the Stardust to give us the quickest of our casting. Once we get into phase 2, the openings are a little easier, but not by much. much. I was debating on saving this run for later in the order because I wanted more arcane to get more procs, but I am so glad I went against it because I don't think I would have been able to complete it if I did it in any late new game cycle than this one. I end up getting a clutch bleed near the end of the fight, which meant I just needed to connect a couple more attacks. I was desperately just shooting off a bunch of thorns at any opening I had possible, and she kept avoiding me, prolonging her life until I finally got lucky and squashed the bug. Now it's time for my personal hell, Mesmer. This fight was so difficult for me to get down. He does so much damage to where if I go under a certain percentage of HP by casting, I will just die from any one of his hits. On top of that, we only have a handful of punish windows, even with the beloved Stardust. I know this run, because it's the winning run, doesn't show all of my pain, but trust me, this was horrible. I get a poise break into a bleed that sends him into phase 2, which I was super grateful for. We are doing a lot of damage when the spell fully connects, and the snake always gives us a little bit more to work with. I just remain patient and only go for the openings that I 100% trust. And a lot of the time in phase 2, we are unable to get the full amount of damage off. There were so many times where the thorns just like would clip the side of Mesmer, dealing like only 300 damage, which was okay because it was still building a bleed. After a clutch bleed in phase 2, I knew I had him, I just needed to play safe. I force him out of the snake and win the fight. Yes! And now it's time for Leta and her allies. I did this fight so many times. I think I just got lucky for this one, honestly, because like this sucked. We start off by spamming Dane with the Thorns and causing a quick bleed and forcing him to pop right away. We try to keep him stunned in one spot as long as possible, but Leta spawns in, making it so we can no longer do so. We then spam until they are both moving towards us. Now our openings are very rare. This fight ended up taking like 12 minutes because I'm just running the whole time. Bleed will always help us. We have to get into a position where they are both very, very far away from each other before I'm able to cast at all. And if we get lucky, we can get 2 casts before they get close to us. We eventually dwindle down Dane until he dies to bleed. Leta luckily isn't too bad alone. We just have to keep running until we get a wide enough gap and we can cast a bunch of them back to back. And this will keep her stun locked long enough to get a couple more casts off. We try to go for bleeds and we repeat the cycle until we kill her. And before this Radahn fight, we have to do some collecting from the base game. First, we make our way over to Mount Gelmir to grind out the Staff of Guilty, which we will offhand for more damage. We then kill Margit, we kill Godric, grab Godric's Great Rune, kill the DTS, grab the Allbridge set for even more Thorns damage. We then head underground and kill Esgar for the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. We kill Ghost Loretta. We do Selen's quest to get the Magic Scorpion Charm. We grab the Secret Medallion half, kill Godfrey, kill Morgott, grab Seppuku, kill Nile, grab the other medallion half, make these 2 goblins fight, grab the Graven Mass Talisman, which also boosts sorceries, kill some Erdtree avatars to get the Magic Boost Crack tiers, as well as the Alpaline Hard tier, and these tiers will be used in every playthrough going forward. And after all of that, it's finally time for Radahn. So first, I try to stack all of my buffs, combining absolutely everything we have grabbed so far, as well as the Golden Vow item, and 3,700 damage. That's all. It's not horrible. After all of my collecting, I was expecting just like a little more because that damage is very temporary. It drops down to like 2,800 very quickly. So I don't end up using a lot of these buffs. I keep the Bleed Talisman, I keep the Graven Mass Talisman, we use the Godric Great Rune, and we use the Staff and Armor. Everything else we don't really use. I even got rid of Seppuku because without it, I was in light load, and that made things so much easier. And I can't use the Scorpion Charm with the Stardust because we just take too much damage. Now let's actually discuss the fight. Because we aren't able to use a lot of the openings, this is very similar to the Rot fight, but we don't have the Rot to carry us. Phase 1, bleeds end up going crazy, getting us into phase 2. We save the Physic until now, but this puts our buff on a timer. So we only go for attacks on the end of the long combos, mainly the ground pull attack, that was my favorite one, and we always try to play as safe as possible. And even if we could go for some damage but we're not at full health, most of the time I'm just gonna take the heal. We end up getting a nice bleed, which puts us into the quote-unquote phase 3, and this is the beginning of the end for Radahn. He almost takes us out, and I wasn't sure if the next cast would kill, so I safely healed and it ends up killing him anyways. If I died there, I would have been so upset with myself, so I'm very glad that I played it safe.
Yes!
We sit in the throne, and now it's time for Journey 4, Beastial. As far as the tier list goes, as much as I struggled, the damage was solid, the bleed was really good, but I think at the same time, like, the cast speed was horrible, and one of the spells was straight up useless, so I can't give it any higher than a C tier. Before we kill anything in this run, we are going back to the main game to take out the Crucible Knight duo, which get absolutely bullied by the Roar. We get this armor which will boost the Crucible spells. After that, we take on the Lion, and we end up testing out all of our spells in our first attempt, and we land on the one that was able to do the most damage was the Thorns. So it's time to breakdance on the Lion, and unlike every other time we have fought him, we can't just hang back, we have to stay real close. This spell was surprisingly good. I didn't expect to use it at all, but here it is. A full charge doing like upwards of 3,000 damage, and just like a little wiggle doing like 1,000. It's a very solid spell. I tried a couple of times to do it at like medium range, and it just sucked. Once we get him into the lightning phase, things get scary. I'm always scared to do the dance because like at any second he could say, this looks like a great spot to strike down from lightning, and smile at me with his goofy face. So we have to wait until he spews out like lightning from his mouth. We can get real close and dance around it. The wind phase ends up being my favorite in every single run because there wasn't like a huge risk staying near him, and there's not a huge risk staying far away from him. So the wind is where I felt the safest. But we breakdance for a final time to finish the Lion. Before we move on to the next boss, I need to pick up one last thing from the overworld. So we go and kill Godfrey to get the Godfrey icon. This boosts charged attacks, which most of our spells are. I also made it a mission to use most of the spells in this class, so we will be taking on the Putrescent Knight only with the Crucible Bloom spell. I opt to not cast it on him, but instead summon it on myself and try to lure him towards me. But as you can see, it does so much damage. The only problem is we don't have many opportunities to get this spell off. A majority of our damage is when he's using the charging attack. When using this spell, I just kind of have to dodge around in the radius of the bloom and hope that he sticks near me. During his phase shift, we can get one cast on him and tank a lot of the damage, so we can get nearly like, look, 10,000 damage off. This spell is so good if you can utilize it properly, and a majority of the time it doesn't look this good, but I had to make sure to showcase it at least once, so we use it to take out the knight. Before we move on, we are yet again heading back to the lands between. This time we are going to take on the Stone Digger Troll for the Roar Medallion to boost the Roar of Regulia. Next up is Mesmer, using the Roar of Regulia. As you can see, the damage is amazing. We do get a couple of new openings, being able to punish more attacks here than in other playthroughs, which was so relieving after some of the struggles that we have endured. We never want to go for the charged roar because it barely does more damage, and in the long run it takes way too long. It's like, I think 2 to 3 times as long to get it off, so we just stick to the little roar taps all the way through. We end up roaring our way through phase 1 with no issues. As per usual, phase 2 is a lot easier, and as you can see off of the explosion attack alone, we do so much damage to him in snake form. Why does this happen exactly? Does anyone know? Does it count as like 2 separate hitboxes, like one as the snake and then one as Mesmer when he's out? That would be my only guess, but either way we take the extra damage. There are not many times when this happens, but it is nice when it does. Just like in phase 1, we get a couple new openings, but not much more to say. For a lot of the runs going forward, it'll be a little less descriptive, just because I've said like most of our strategy, I'll just be highlighting some of the spells and anything cool that happens during the fight. Anyways, Mesmer was not a big deal this time around. Next up is Romina. We use 2 of the spells that we have just used. We use the Bloom for the intro attack as she is coming towards us. We sort of stick by the fog wall, wait for her to come to us and try to keep her within the Bloom. And then after that, it's mainly just using the Roar. As long as we are hugging the centipede, we will be okay. I also found out that the Roar had decent damage range, because a couple of times I would cast it and then she would try to like wiggle herself away and I was still getting the damage. And I can't tell if it's because like my spell has range or if it's because her hitbox is so long. Anytime she goes for the butterfly attack, I try to time the Bloom for when she lands. But besides that, we just stick to the Roar and we close out the fight. Now it's time for Leta and her allies, because yet again I forgot about the quest. This is what happens when I get stuck on the Thorns run for like 3 days straight. We end up getting lucky. As you can see, the Roar knocks over the NPCs, making this fight so much easier. As long as I could just continuously cast, I was able to kill Hornsent before Dane was able to touch us. attacks. I then spam the spell to do as much damage as possible before Leta spawns in, which drains him of his pot, which is always our goal. This is a rare scenario where I actually want them to be close together because it knocks them both on the floor at the same time, and we do this until Dane is dead, and then when Leta is all alone, we mop the floors with her. And because I wanted to showcase most of the spells, I'm not touching the damn feathers, they'd sucked so much, I'm going to be using the Divine Beast Tornado on Rellana. This spell is very unique because it is very large, but it can do double damage. Because it lingers so long, if she tries to move, the spell counts as hitting twice because it's so large. So a lot of the time I'm getting double damage, which is a huge plus. We got her to phase 2 by just simply doing this. Now in phase 2, damage was much harder to get off. At this point in the new game cycle, I am taking way too much damage, so I want to only attack when I know I can get damage off. And with this spell, that's usually only when she's going for the phase transition attack or the big sword attack. Any other attack takes too long. So this fight was super dragged out because of it. I didn't get many opportunities to attack, so after 5 minutes of running in circles, I was able to take her out. Before we kill Radahn, it's time to head back to the lands between to pick up the Faithful Canvas Talisman for some extra incantation damage. Now it's time for Radahn. I found the best spell for the job was, surprisingly, the Thorns. So we will be dancing all over Radahn's toes, because even with the short burst, it does good damage. Most, if not all of the attacks in phase 1 are just very much punishable. With the dance, it goes by rather quickly, and just like every Radahn forward, we're just preserving our physic until phase 2. Speaking of, we get unlucky in phase 2 this time around because he doesn't go up right away, but any other run, whenever he would go up, I would try to use the bloom. So we just get dancing all around on Radahn. This is one of the rare Radahn fights where even if I had opportunities to go for the fully charged attacks, we never do. It just ends up taking too long and gets us killed most of the time anyways, so it's just not worth it. Radahn this time around wasn't too bad. Also, if you want to see any of these runs without commentary, I will have all of the different compilations of the runs on my VOD channel. So if you want to check it out, it'll just be the raw gameplay of all of these fights. And because when I did this the first time, I was accused of cheating, so I was like, why would I cheat? It's Elden Ring. But once we get into the final phase of the fight, it was very simple, and I can charge it up for the final blow to dance Radahn to death. We take the throne, and it's time for Journey 5. As far as the tier list goes, the Beastial spells were diverse, they did some solid damage, but I couldn't tell if I was just getting better at these bosses or I just had the right tools. But this was one of the quickest runs of the whole challenge. I don't think it's as good as Rot, so I think I'm going to slap it into A tier. Gravity. Before we do anything, we go grab the meteorite staff to offhand it for more damage. We then go fight the lion to test out our spells. We learn rather quickly that the gravitational missile is very interesting, because you sort of throw it out, it pulses 3 times before it explodes. It honestly has a very small radius and doesn't shoot super far, but in the right conditions, it can do good damage. The other spell we have, Blades of Stone, is way better. You can either quick cast it or charge it, and it will always spawn underneath the boss. When you charge it up, it hits more than once. I think it hits 3 times, and it does great damage. And we basically end up sticking with this spell to destroy the lion. This fight was quick, and there wasn't much to test out with there only being 2 spells. I didn't love the missile, and don't know if I used it much going forward. And boys, for the first time in this challenge, we first tried Mesmer. I fumbled the explosion attack, but it doesn't matter because the Blades of Stone does so much damage to Mesmer. If we fully charge it, it does nearly 5,000 damage. That's the second highest number that we have seen so far off of one spell. The other one was the Putrescent Knight with the last run with the bloom. I think that did almost 10k. Long story short, this spell is godly. And like all of the other runs so far, we are mainly going for charged attacks whenever he uses any move that makes his spear go away and has to reconjure it in his hands. For all of the other attacks, we can just light tap it, but we are mainly prioritizing the charged attacks. We get into phase 2 and it only gets easier. We have more opportunities to fully charge and just watch his HP bar drain. We killed Mesmer with no issues for the first time, and it felt so good. It's time for Romina. We stick to the Blades of Stone yet again because whenever I tried to use the missile, it just got outclassed, so I never really saw a point of coming back to it. I tried to stick closer to Romina during the first phase and only go for the quick casts because I didn't want to get hit too much and risk getting Scarlet Rot. Anytime I get Rot in this fight, the attempt is just over. She also moves a ton, so I found the quick cast to be more consistent than charging it. There was also little to no downside to them besides the damage not being as high. We can make it work. We get into phase 2 and not much changes here. We go for some charge attacks when we can, but she wasn't much of a threat and we end up taking her out. I'm excited for this next one because it's Bayle. It's been a while since we've seen you. We mainly go for the full charge attacks against Bayle, and if we get lucky, they will connect with his face, doing the max amount of damage. And if we're unlucky, it just hits his body and does just like a good amount of damage. We end up getting through phase 1 very quickly. Phase 2, we also just go for charge attacks when we can. There are fewer openings in phase 2. In this new game cycle, we can lose so much HP in the blink of an eye. Even with me using a double defensive talisman setup, it just doesn't matter. I also found in this phase, there were times where my Blades of Stone would just miss, and I think it's because he's moving so much. So to try to get him to stay in one place, we tried to stick a little closer to him, and that ended up working out great, making phase 2 a lot easier. After he tried to nuke us, we end up claiming his heart, which we turn around and trade in for Bayle's Tyranny. Now it's time for the NPC fight. This is the last time that I forget about Leta's quest. Both of my spells are useful in this fight. I just cast the missile to keep them in one place because it has like this gravitational pull effect, and then use the stone on them while they're stun locked to annihilate their HP bar. Just look at how quick Hornet dies. Dane goes out the same way, and I actually killed him before Leta is able to get to me. That's how much damage we're doing. Leta fell to the same fate, and I loved every second of it. This felt like I finally got my revenge for my very first playthrough and all of the misery that they caused me on release. With them dead, it's time to move on to the final challenge, Radahn. Even though we have been destroying every boss so far, Radahn is always built different. We rarely get to charge our attacks, so it's just using the quick stone, and it does some okay damage. It's on the lower end of our Radahn damage so far, and the Radahn fights from this point on are long. I think this one was like 5 minutes, and like one of the longest fights gets up to like 8 to 9 minutes. It turns into more of an endurance test more than anything because of how much HP he gets. For reference, his starting HP is like 46,000, and right now in this new game cycle, he has 65,000, and the maximum amount of HP he will get in our 7th run onwards is 70,000 HP, which is absolutely absurd. We end up getting through phase 1 with no issues, and phase 2, not much changes in terms of strategy. We only go for charged attacks when he goes for his long combo attacks, and every other time is a quick cast. I'll let some of this play out, but I don't have much more to add. Nothing too crazy happens in this run. The Blades of Stone is just a solid spell, and it gets the job done. With Radahn dead, it's time for the next new game cycle, Throne Shot Journey 6. As for the tier, I think this was a really solid spell type, and I always loved Gravity, and maybe there's some bias there. Because we didn't get much usage on the missile, I can't give it S tier, but the Blades hard carried throughout the whole run. It did good damage against absolutely everything. I got a couple first tries with it, which I didn't get in my other runs, but because it only has 2 spells, I think I can only cap it out with an A. It's time for Glintstone. Before we start the DLC, we pick up the tailoring tools, switch our High Priest robe to the Finger robe because it only gets the damage buff when it's tailored, and now it's time for the Lion. As we are getting a feel for our spells, Glintstone Nails feels the best off of first uses. One thing I will note, I never get to use the moon spells because it just cost way too much in, and I was never able to factor it into my leveling. The Nails are a funny looking spell, to say the least. They like hop towards the foe, they just like skip and like jump throughout the air. It tracks very well and got us a poise break rather early. And when this happens, we tried out the Microcosm spell and it did some good damage, but it's weird and it's like very similar to the missile spell that we just didn't use. So I don't think I'm going to be using this much either. But yeah, the nails are really good all around, making the lion a non-issue. And this time it's straight to Mesmer. If you couldn't tell by now, I really wanted to get this challenge over with. Glintstone Nails will be our spell of choice because it's just a really solid spell. It charges for good damage and it won't miss most of the time, and that was a big selling point for me. Being able to track Mesmer was really good because he moves around so much. We are mainly going for charged attacks using the usual openings. We do end up getting a poise break, but only can get one additional cast off, and that's one thing that's always like peeved me with Mesmer in particular. He gets up so fast. We get into phase 2, and at this point we had to start preserving our physic for Mesmer. This time we use it like halfway through phase 1. Later on we'll start using it at like the start of phase 2, and that's just because he's doing way too much damage to us without the hard tier. So if I make simple mistakes, I will just die, especially when he goes for the snake combo, because I have dodged the first 2 attacks in that combo, but if I get hit by the last one, it can just straight up one-shot me from full HP. Our hard tier prevents that, and the extra damage is nice to have. We got lucky with Mesmer going for the orb attack at the end, letting us take him out with some minor hiccups. Before we go to Romina, we scoop up the Carrion Glintblade staff to offhand for some extra damage for the Glintblade trio spell, because for Romina, that will be our spell of choice. This spell is interesting. It is always firing on a delay, which actually helps us here. Once we enter the arena, we can cast a bunch of them before she even gets to us. By the time she wiggles her way down, they all start firing off at the same time, doing a ton of damage at once. It also helps that it is targeting the Romina body, and it rarely misses. There are even instances where she runs towards me and runs into the spell, taking more damage. The first phase was nothing special, us casting whenever we could. For phase 2 though, we can charge up a bunch of Glintblade trios when she is going for the butterfly attacks. By the time she is back on the ground, she will take a ton of damage. We loved it whenever she went for the butterfly attack because I could just sit there and stack them up. And as you can see, when she goes for it a second time, it practically cuts her remaining HP in half. Even though we have Scarlet Rot, I knew I had it in the bag. Killer. Wait. Give it. Yes! And now it's time for the NPC fight. Our spell of choice here is Cherishing Fingers. This spell, in most instances, sucks. It summons fingers around you, and to do any damage to anything, it means the enemy needs to be right beside you. And it never really works out this way for like any of the boss fights, except for here. I get right up close to Dane, and I can chain these together with the wall to pin him against it, because this spell does 2 things that benefits us. It knocks down Dane over and over again, and it also has another secret benefit of deflecting the disc. Just look at that. It's so silly, but it works. Dane dies, and now we can just knock over Leta a bunch, and it felt so good. Cool that I was able to find a use for this spell, because I didn't think I would. But we do end up finishing her with the nails. Now it's time for Radahn. I tried all of the spells here, and the spell we landed on was the Glintblade trio. I do have some bad news. Because I was recording something else during the daytime, I had forgotten to switch my audio tracks back, so this one fight has no game audio, which kind of sucks. So we're not gonna linger here for too long. It got the job done. It wasn't a very difficult fight. It was annoying because sometimes it could just miss whenever he would go for those attacks where he would teleport away. Radahn was hard, but nothing crazy. We sit on the throne and begin Journey 7. As far as where Glintstone falls, I do think it was just okay. Nothing blew me away, and I loved having an answer to the NPC fight, but I just couldn't find a use for Microcosm, and on top of that, the Glintstone nail was just useless when I could just use nails plural instead. I think it's deserving of a B tier. Now it's time for lightning. Before we start fighting things, there was a spell I actually forgot to get, so we go grab the Knight's Lightning Spear. The audio issues persisted for the first couple of fights, so we are just gonna skip over them. The one thing I can note though is during the lion fight, we found out that the Lightning Spear was just the best spell by far, and during the Putrescent Knight fight, I killed him mainly using Bayle's Flame Lightning, so I'll show you that here. It felt really good and it was super cool. Now that we have audio back, it's time for Mesmer. Our spell of choice is the Knight's Lightning Spear. It is doing some really solid damage, and we will only try to go for charged attacks to get the most out of it, which means we are back to a limited amount of openings, but the damage more than makes up for it. This also has a little delay on it before they all fire off. It's not as crazy as the Glintblade trio, but it's something to note. That doesn't really factor in this fight, but it will during Romina. We get through phase 1, and at the start of phase 2, we can actually change it up a bit, and we can attack while the snake is coming down for a little bit of an extra opening. I think this is like the only time we can do this, because most of the spells that we end up using don't have a good enough range to pull it off. The same as phase 1, we are still mainly going for the charge attacks to take out Mesmer. Time for Romina. Is it Romina or Romina? Have I been saying it wrong the whole time? As I mentioned earlier, the spell of choice will be the King's Lightning Spear. I can't stagger it at the beginning like I could with the Glintblade light trio, but it is doing some great damage without that effect. The only time the delay really helps us here is when she is moving a lot. The initial spear can miss, but the bursts of spears afterwards rarely ever miss. Phase 1 was actually kind of difficult, but nothing we couldn't handle. Phase 2 was a lot scarier because at this point the damage everyone does is absolutely ridiculous. I can lose over half of our HP bar off of one hit with the hard tier on. The only good thing to note, at this point forward, it can't get any harder. We are now at the game cap of New Game +7. I was originally going to mod my game to keep the difficulty going up after New Game +7, but I am so glad I didn't, after how bad I was getting whooped already. Phase 2 was really scary near the end, but we managed to close it out. Now it's time for Leta and Dane. This time there were no fancy get out of jail free spells, I just had to thug it out with the Knight's Lightning Spear, which kinda sucks because this fight can be so boring when it's fought the proper way. We just have to spend the better part of 5 minutes running in circles hoping that we get lucky enough that they give me an opening, especially when it's both of them. When it's Dane on his own, it's not too bad, but once we get Leta in the mix, it's time to put on our running shoes and hit the court. We do end up winning this fight in the long run, and it is always such a stress reliever to kill these two. Before we take down Radahn, we have to go back into the capital, meaning we have to kill the DTS so we can pick up the gravel stone seal for some extra damage. Now it's time for Radahn, and just like every other fight in this run, we are only using Knight's Lightning Spear because the other spells aren't great, and we are not going for as many charged attacks this time around. I think for this Radahn and the next two, I will just like let it play out because you're probably tired of me like saying the same thing over and over again, and these fights are scary hard and kind of impressive if I do say so myself, so I'll let the fights speak for themselves. Get fucked. What a fight. Okay, before I end this cycle, I need to kill this knight here over and over again until I get the Fire Knight armor, which we will use in our next run. We sit on the throne, and now it's time for Journey 8. Tier list time. Okay, so Lightning was sort of a one-trick pony for the most part. Electrocharge kind of stunk, and Bayle's spell was only good for like one fight, but the Knight's Lightning Spear was really good. I think it's fair to put this into the A tier. Fire! Before we go into the DLC, we kill this Putrid avatar for the Fire Shrouding crack tier, and now we take on the Lion. After running through all of the spells, Fire Serpent was easily the best. It has a small delay, but it does have a very short range, so we need to keep that in mind. I will note, we do end up making use of all of our spells in this class, which I was very happy with. The Fire Serpent was very easy to fire off multiple times very quickly. The damage was solid and very easy to stack up. I can fire off like 2 to 3 of them in the time frame it would take to fire off one fully charged one. But when I did charge it, oh, the damage was good. I think it was like 2k per cast with it taking like no FP. Overall, a very solid spell and carried us through the Lion. Next, we head straight to Romina because I was not about to deal with Mesmer yet. Who would have known that Mesmer, the fire boss, resists fire? Shocker. We open up the fight by drinking our Physic and then casting one Fire Serpent before we attempt Rain of Fire. We barely get it off and we get some nice opening damage with it. This fight we will be using a couple of different spells to get the job done. The main one will continue to be Fire Serpent, but once we get into the butterfly phase, we will summon another round of Rain of Fire onto Romina, dealing some big damage. We will always try to use it whenever we get big openings like that. I also get Romina very low and wanted to try something new to finish her off, so I pulled out Bayle's Tyranny, and the spell was surprisingly good. It just takes too damn long to be able to use it consistently, but we do end up killing Romina with it just to say I used the spell. On to Mesmer. This fight was a long one. We are still using the Fire Serpent and it doesn't do a lot of damage. If I use a fully charged attack, I get 1k damage, but if I just fire off a normal one, it's like 600 damage. And with Mesmer at this point having 65,000 HP, that's a dreadful amount of times I have to hit Mesmer with this spell. And I am not waiting around for the charge attack openings. I'm just attacking as much as I can, as fast as I can. This was a long fought battle, and it's the reason why we did Romina first, because I was losing my mind fighting Mesmer for hours on end. I needed something new. So I came back here with a fresh mindset. Sometimes that's all you really need. Elden Ring is much more a mental game than it is a skill game. We got into phase 2 and it doesn't get much easier here. The only thing that does help is having the Wondrous Physic to give us some extra damage especially when it's charged. I take so much damage though, so any little slip up can cost me the run even with the defensive buff active. And after many attempts and lots of struggling, we take out Mesmer. Leta and Dane this time around were super easy. The explosion on Mesmer's orb sat them down, so I just needed to keep managing my stamina bar. Just look at how much stamina it eats up, but as long as I keep tabs on that, they don't stand a chance. I love that even with both of them, the explosion keeps them back, so it's the one time where I don't really need to keep track of Leta while I'm focusing on Dane. It also helps that it does a ton of damage, making them very easy this time around. For Radahn, I need to kill Godfrey to grab his Great Rune because I was struggling. I want to say this was the longest I have spent on Radahn in this whole challenge. The damage was low and I was getting killed left, right, and center. I even had to use the forbidden tech of grabbing the Ancient Dragon's Blessing to pop it for when my Physic runs out. Because yes, the fight was so long that even after preserving my Physic for phase 2, it would run out before he ended up doing the Meteor attack. So I would use this to at least get some of my defenses back to stand a chance. And I will let the majority of this fight play out by itself. I will see you on the other side. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, my heart is going crazy, dude. I've been stuck on this one the longest. Like, I don't know how, why. It's been like 15 hours of just this. It's been 3 days of just logging on and doing this, and it sucks, and I hate it. But we're almost done. Oh, I've been fighting Radahn for so long. I hate Radahn. I never want to see him again after this challenge. We sit on the throne, and now it's time for the final journey, Journey 9. Fire was really solid, but nothing special. Saving it for this late in the run, it definitely hurt its stock by quite a bit. Having both Mesmer and Radahn taking resisted damage to fire sucked a lot. So I can see that they have potential, and they would have been good against some of the other bosses, but with my experience with them in this run, I can't give it any higher than a B. Yes, I know now that I 100% totally forgot about the Midra spell, and I do apologize for that. And I also did try to get the Blood Flame spell to like be useful, but it just took too long, and I could never find like a good enough use case for it to be practical. Ghost Flame. Lion Time. Rings of Spectral Light is the best spell we have by far. I will show some earlier attempts of trying to use the other spells, but wow, they stink. The Massive Putrescence is cool in concept, but it takes a long time to fire off, and then when it does like fire off, it's like a little bomb. You like shoot it out and it takes a little bit to detonate, so it just doesn't mesh well with a lot of the bosses because they move around so quickly. And the Vortex is straight up a stinker spell. You have to be like right beside the boss for it to do any sort of damage. At this point in the run, I am staying as far away as possible from every single boss. I'm like a glass cannon. You bump into me and I will break. On the other hand, the Rings of Spectral Light is very cool. You make a bunch of like 8s in the sky, they shoot off a bunch of rolling rings towards the enemies that can run them down and explode into like a little ghost flame explosion. All of these spells give frostbite, which is a huge plus. I don't often charge them up because I just want to hit him as many times as possible to stack our frost procs. And they also take increased damage afterwards, making it feel even better. We didn't struggle much on the lion and we take him out. So now we are going straight to Mesmer. We will continue to use Rings of Spectral Light as I never found a good use case for the other spells. And in terms of strategy, nothing changes here. This time around we will be going for charged attacks and hoping that the frost gods bless us with the procs. And this time we did again save our physic until phase 2 because I was getting bodied anytime I made it to phase 2. My favorite moments were when he straight up jumps into all of the rings, just taking a bunch of damage by himself, making my job easier. We take out Mesmer after a honestly rather tame battle. It's time for Romina, and I believe this was the first time in this whole challenge that we beat her first try. I throw off a mass at the start, but I still don't love how long it takes to cast, so I stick to the rings, but even these aren't the greatest in this fight because they go all over the place with her moving so much. Luckily, we end up getting some quick procs, and I love setting them as like traps for her to run into rather than using them as a normal spell. Like, for example, if she was ever flying in the sky about to like slam down on me, I would try to like charge it up, lay it down like a trap so she can fall into it and take big damage. I don't know why, but when it happens like that, the damage is just significantly higher than if I hit like every single one of my rings. Does anyone know why this happens? Not much changes for us in phase 2, and we take out Romina. And then we head back to Limgrave to pick up the Dragon Communion Seal, as it is time for my secret weapon. I 100% forgot about the spell until now, but we are using the Ghost Flame Breath, which we will use to take on Leta and Dane. Even with the breath, it was not easy whatsoever. We start off by doing as much damage as possible to Dane while trying to keep him stuck in one place until Leta spawns in. We get lucky with this attempt because she also gets caught in the breath, allowing me to do some additional damage to Dane and chipping her down in the process. And now it's time for the sprint. We were just running around in circles waiting for Dane to be slightly isolated so I can breathe on him. I repeat this process until I was able to take out Dane. Once I had Leta alone, it was slightly easier, but not by much. I just had to keep running until I had as much distance as possible and let off a couple breaths. I would repeat this process until she was dead. And now it is finally time for the final Radahn. I'm just gonna let this fight play out because it's beautiful. It really is. And this will be a goodbye from me. In-game Curtis will have some words for you, but I appreciate you for watching this far. I hope you have a great day. If you enjoyed, and I appreciate you, be sure to subscribe. It's finally done.
Oh, that feels good. I didn't need all these FP pots, but this one was, compared to the last run, night and day. This was so much easier, and it just felt so much better. It feels so good to finally get this challenge done. I know it's been asked for a while, and I've been scared to do it because I knew it would take me a ton of time because I am not good at Radahn. What a challenge. I mean, I appreciate you guys for watching if you are still here. But yeah, I hope you have a great day. I will see you in the next video. It has been Curtis the Cactus, guys. Later.
Oh, hell no.